goes right in, dude.
Oh,
It's me.
got it.
I mean, it's you.
It's me.
It's not me. It's you.
Got it.
You want to just use mine and give the link to your people, or what?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, because mine's rolling. It's got my name on it though. That's kind of weird. See if I can edit it. Oh, I can. Let's say, what do you want to call it, Tommy?
Life coach Tommy and spiritual coach Daniel.
Life coach Tommy and spiritual coach. Try to spell spiritual for me. Spirit.
Yeah.
SPIRITUAL.
UAL.
UAL. Spiritual coach.
Daniel.
Daniel.
Yeah.
DANIEL.
Correct.
Okay. Tell viewers about your stream. What do you want to say?
Tune in now for some solid live coaching. And what adjective would you use to describe your spiritual
Balancing.
balancing spiritual coaching?
And balancing.
Because exorcism sounds really weird on. Although we could, people would probably watch.
Balancing.
What is your YouTube page?
Spiritual. It is. It is. ES Audio. Oh yeah, it's ES Audio Recording Studios. There you go. You guys are live, so.
Nice.
Oh.
Here we are.
I mean, you got no people watching you, but that's fine.
That's great.
That's a good thing right there.
Is there a link that we can paste on social medias?
There should be, huh?
There we are.
You would think there would be.
Oh, you found it?
Share. There we go. Let me
Great.
share it with you.
Awesome. You want to text that?
You want to share it to your
Yeah.
Facebook?
Yeah.
What's your Facebook?
It's
No, never mind. You don't want to give me your Facebook login.
Okay.
I don't want that. I don't want to be responsible. How about if I just send you the link, copy video link? I'll send it to you and you can share it to your Facebook.
okay. That sounds good.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Just reply to this email. There we go.
Looking at myself.
Send. So that's the link that you need
Okay, great.
to share to your Facebook.
Podcast. Broadcast.
You
Okay.
got one current viewer.
Nice.
Who's that, you think?
Is it you, Daniel?
Probably. Hey,
Oh, we got two. Moving on up in the world here.
You know?
The one might be me. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm gonna get this. We're gonna put this on the social medias. Okay.
it's on my page. So
For our mental fitness podcast broadcast. Oh, I should have used the hashtags, but that's fine.
There we go. Now I can see everything we need to on the screen.
Mental fitness podcast.
So we have 3 hours and 51 minutes of recording. You good with that?
I think so. I
That
think
should be
we'll,
fine.
we'll only need less than an hour. So that's on LinkedIn.
I'm gonna go ahead and record this.
Great.
So, Tommy, if you look over, I don't know, can you see these things here?
Yeah.
That's your on-air status.
Okay.
And as long as this stays above 5, you're gonna be fine. This is your recording status, and you'll see that number 351 will go down.
Got it.
There's 3 hours and 51 seconds left. So, that should be cool.
we're good.
Yeah, it's good. Should be good to go.
All right. Great.
Really love to get you closer to this
Oh,
microphone.
yeah, for sure. That works.
Slide down even further.
Yeah. So like
Are you
right
right-handed?
on
Or
top of it,
left-handed?
left-handed.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course.
That's why
So
you
he-
sat there.
But he
Right.
wanted that side. So
Hey,
he's the boss.
that's good.
All right.
All right, you guys feeling good?
Feeling good.
Let me record here as well. Let me make sure this is set up. 'Cause
As groovy as a lava lamp in 1975.
Nice.
I just heard that on the radio today. So
Let's see here.
Okay, I'm recording here too, multi-track, so we getting that raw audio as well. I think we're all happy. Everybody's good.
Great.
Can you tell how many viewers you have on your YouTube thing?
Cool. I posted on my social medias. Let's see. Are you still tuned in?
0 current viewers right now, so
Okay.
it's not good.
Don't-
You guys are running a stream like I do.
don't
Right.
judge us. How dare you, sir?
Well, I'm just putting you in the same category with me.
Right.
Oh,
Because they're in
then,
the same position.
then I moved up in the world. First day here, and I've already moved up.
Okay, I'm gonna close this curtain and I'm gonna close this door. You guys are good to go.
We are
When
good.
you're done, just let me know and I'll come in and turn stuff off.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Donnie.
All right.
All right, if you're tuning in just now, we went through a lot of pre-production, which is great. This is our first live broadcast podcast with spiritual coach Daniel
How you doing?
and live coach Tommy. Welcome. And I'm going to try not to pay too much attention to the monitor in the background and just focus on the camera.
Trying to not to be
Try to-
too vain.
Try to focus
Try-
on you, focus on the camera, and we're good.
It can be difficult when you have a camera because you want to make sure that you look good and
Yes, exactly. Want to make sure we look good. Okay, so that's.
well, congratulations on your first episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that because I posted on LinkedIn and I posted on, what was the other one? This is all going to be edited, by the way. So, and then we'll do an actual start. Posted on LinkedIn, posted on Facebook, on my life coaching page. I'm wondering if I should post it on the personal page. I'm okay. Maybe once we have more viewers and we have more than just this simple logo.
Hey, got to start somewhere.
Right. I will. I'm gonna see if I can get this off camera. I do want to keep an eye on viewership in case we have any viewers.
Yes.
One thing we are missing though is I like what you do, and I'm gonna have to figure out how we can get this on StreamYard because I like how people can actually comment. Oh, I forgot. He has a phone line
Oh.
that can tune in, so people can call in. That'll be later down the road. Okay, so we're gonna do a hard start. I'm gonna count down. I wish we had a clock. I wonder what that clock, if that clock works. There's no actual clock in here.
Here, this will keep your phone up.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Tell me about
Oh, I'm like, how do things work?
It's a wallet one. So
There you go. All right.
you go, sir. Modern technology in a
Right.
wallet.
Is there right? Exactly. Is there a way to? Because we don't have the viewership. Can I stick it like this? Is that
Yes.
possible?
Just
Because we only have one viewer right now. I don't want to break your thing.
turn it in the other way. There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Beautiful.
It'll keep it up.
Okay. Now we have 2 viewers. Oh, there it's on camera. That's fine. I'll just keep it back here. Okay. Cool. All right. We're gonna do a hard start.
Deep breath.
Hello for the 2 people that are watching right now. They see all this pre-production madness.
They're in on it from the beginning.
Yeah, this is it.
But aren't you glad you have a spiritual coach here to walk you through the energy?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
We do come in handy, damn it.
Yes, you do. Okay, so here we go. 10. No, we're going to do from 5, 4, 3. Welcome to our first initial mental fitness podcast broadcast. It's going to be all over the social medias. This will also be broadcast for your listening pleasure on iTunes. This is Life Coach Tommy, and sitting across from me is I'll go ahead and introduce.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm spiritual coach Daniel. It's so good to be here. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate
joining.
it.
Yeah. Haven't seen you since way before the pandemic.
Way before.
Way before. It's been a good, I would say, what, 20 months? Almost, well, just over a year. It's been a long
Yeah,
time.
because I think we did some of the last episodes on my shows,
Yeah.
like at the end of 19. So
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
been a little bit.
It's been a long time. But basically, we've decided to start this podcast. We both have experience in front of the camera. We've done many sorts of interviews. And now we're going to do this. You can tune in regularly unless schedule inhibits. This will be every other Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. We will definitely, as this is our initial broadcast, so we're allowed to start late. But starting next week, week after next, there'll be more promotion, all that marketing stuff you're supposed to do to get your podcast out to the world. So how we're starting off this initial podcast is basically there's a 6-module series that I've started or I've created with an ebook that I'll be publishing. It'll be available for download free on my website soon.
Nice.
It'll be a mental fitness ebook essentially. And this is module 1 essentially. The first 6 broadcasts will be part of those 6 modules. And so this whole podcast situation will be broken down in 3 segments. We'll go over the one module out of that ebook, and then we'll have a Q&A section, as well as we like to hear from people, and we like to hear from professionals who've been successful, who've had some level of success, and how they stay on track for that success. So eventually we'll have those people calling in, we'll have them live, but right now I did a pre-interview before this podcast, so we have notes from them, and I'll mention their names and what they do. And that's it. Is there anything that you'd like to add as far as spiritual coaching or what you do?
Well, I think that, especially coming out of the situation, and actually we're still in, because it seems like we keep coming out, going back in.
Yeah.
When you're trying to do a life coaching sessions, and there is an energy concept or part to it that we forget. Being locked in, being locked out, not knowing how things are going to happen when you wake up in the morning. Not only does it affect your business, but it affects your energy. And if those are not balanced, it causes a little bit of chaos. And I think folks forget that aspect. So I'm glad that we're doing this together, because the third part is body, because it's body, mind, and spirit. Other than having somebody do exercises while we're sitting here, we're almost there at that part. So
exactly.
It's really cool.
Yeah, well, it's been amazing, and we won't spend this time waxing poetic too much. I mean, maybe we will, I don't know, but if it's valuable, but the energy that has drained over the past 18 to 20 months because of this pandemic is exhausting. And if you're out there and you're experiencing that, or if you have experienced that and you were excited about the pandemic ending, and now here we are with the Delta variant, suddenly there's a new anxiety where we thought we were at the beginning of the end. It's all normal. It sucks. It really is taxing and burdensome, but it's all normal and you're not alone. So great note on the energy. So the first module we're going to go over is basically, how do we give ourselves permission to dream again, especially in this perfect timing because of the pandemic? What does that mean? And as a life coach, I don't really like the word dream. When my clients say my dream is this or my dream is that, I always try to do a neuro-linguistic alternate where we turn that word dream into goals, where dreams are essentially not real. It's not a real thing. It's something that happens to you in your sleep, and it's part of chemical reactions that are happening inside your brain. So it's not real. It's not. But a goal is something that has an action item that can actually be accomplished. So when I say, how do we give ourselves permission to dream again, that's an introduction to dreaming, but also how do we turn that into realistic goals? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And so to start us off, what are your thoughts on that? What have you experienced, and what are you doing?
as far as the dream concept,
Giving yourself permission to dream again.
which is interesting because on my side of the table, we want to go after those dreams because those dreams create manifestations, those become visions, and then they become the goal. So it's a process. How do I give myself permission to dream? What I tell me and my clients is, first of all, as we get older, our dreams are allowed to evolve. So the dream that I had when I was 20 years old versus today, it could be on the same line of the goal that I have for myself, but the dream might change. So the game stays the same, but the pieces might change a little bit. And how do I give myself permission is by that. It is allowing myself, it's allowing ourselves, giving ourselves permission to know that it will change, that the dream you had when you were single, the moment you get married, it might change a little bit. From wanting children to having children, it'll change a little bit. And that's where I give myself permission, is to know that in the sessions we sit back and go, well, what's the dream? How has it evolved? And then going, okay, so I can change it. Versus I'm being stuck on this dream that I had 30 years ago. And now it becomes unattainable because we haven't looked at it, we haven't changed it, we haven't modified it. And now our goals become even less attainable as well. Does that make sense?
Right, it does, yeah. And I like your analogy of the game staying the same, because the game does stay the same. But excuse me, there are so many elements that change within the game. And so, as is normal for any game, once elements are changing, you also need to change.
Right.
The game pieces need to be whittled into different forms, and so your approach needs to change. That was a great analogy. And the biggest thing is, one of the things that I focus on with my clients is the consequences that can result due to not accomplishing the goals. Sometimes I have some resistance to this, positive resistance, but I ask them the question, it's like, what happens if you don't accomplish this? What happens if you don't do this? And they sometimes get caught in a mental trap, which is normal, which is what you want to be in, because then the coach can help you out of that. But the mental trap becomes like, well, I don't want to even think about that. Sometimes though, and it's funny because I actually asked the same question in an initial call whenever they give me their their stuff and, you know, why they want a life coach and why they're looking to hire a life coach. I asked them the question. It's like, well, what happens if all these things that you want a life coach for, what happens if that doesn't happen? And in that wavelength, I can ascertain what kind of client they're going to be. Because if they kind of shrug it off and it's not that important, then I'm like, okay, this may not be a good fit, because I'm looking for clients that, like, it's painful. Like, the pain has to really be there, that if you don't accomplish this goal, it's going to be extremely painful. Obviously, that's a bit hyperbolic and dramatic, and it doesn't have to be that high level. But if I don't sense any sort of pain from not wanting to achieve that dream or goal, then our client relationship's not going to be a good fit, because I sense that they're not willing to do the work that it takes in order to get to that next level. And so that's one of the things, like, not only giving yourself permission to dream, how do we get past that anxiety? It's like, what's the point, right? If we're in the middle of this pandemic, or you forget about the pandemic, just life, right? We're in the middle of life every single waking moment. How do we give ourselves permission to dream again? And getting that past that anxiety is asking ourselves, what happens when that dream doesn't become a reality? If that dream doesn't become a reality, what's the consequence? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, now that we've kind of processed the dream, what is your dream? And for sake of the conversation, be a singer, per se. Okay, you're going to be a singer. It's like, okay, cool. It's like, what if that doesn't happen? And for me, the red flags are somebody who's not willing to look or even acknowledge a plan B, which on my side, I'm going to talk tables. On my side of the table, a plan B is not that we're not going to go after your goal. It's just we're going to have a different strategy should something not happen. And you're right, life happens. this time life, I see life as a dodgeball game. It just throws balls at you. Sometimes you catch them and sometimes they kick you out for a little bit. Unfortunately, right now we're going through almost 2 year now, a year and a half of a dodgeball game that we're kind of losing on this one.
Yeah.
So there has to be a plan B strategy to get to your goal. And I agree with you. If somebody is like, oh yeah, whatever, you're like, well then how committed are you to your dreams and goals if you're willing to give them up that easy? Right. So what are we fighting for? What are we working towards? So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I do want somebody who's going to like wince a little or hesitate or panic when I say, what if it doesn't work out the way you think?
Right. Yeah.
And if I don't see a little bit of tension, I'm like, well, then this may not be the dream that you want or the dream or the goal that you're going after.
Right. Exactly. And I'm reminded this is, I don't know why this is kind of irrelevant and off topic, but it's in my head. And I do that in my sessions where if something is in my head and it won't go away, I have to bring it out. And usually it's always helpful. But there was everyone, especially if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know who Tony Robbins is. He's kind of a household name. So, I'd be surprised if somebody told me I didn't know who Tony Robbins was. But I've listened to a lot of his motivational stuff. And one thing he asked is about giving up on dreams and giving up on goals and how hard you try. He asked the parents in the audience, he said, when do you give up on your child whenever they're trying to walk? When do you stop? When do you give up on that child and admit that they'll never be able to walk? And he says that a lot of parents like sit up and it's like, my child's going to keep on trying until he can walk. It's like, you don't stop the child. If the child's having problems and they fall and they bump their head or whatever happens, you pick them back up and you guide them and you show them. And sometimes they just figure it out on their own. But you never tell the child, or hopefully you don't tell the child to stop trying. And so he has a philosophy that I would think this is a common philosophy, but it was introduced to me by Tony Robbins, was try until you make it. And, giving yourself that permission to keep trying and to keep going, is important. And it helps you, notice that this is a manifestation, as you've mentioned. This is something that you're going to keep doing, and try until. And whatever iterations that try action is going to be, so be it, right? The plan B, the plan C, the plan F, the plan G, the plan H.
Yeah. And if you go to Z, start over again. Yeah.
So then you got alpha, beta, and then we go to the Greek alphabet.
Same in Spanish if you need to.
Right. So we've talked a lot about, the consequences of not achieving your dream or not giving yourself permission to dream and not pursuing your dreams. But now one of the things I want to talk about is a way forward. You've got that dream, you've got that goal in mind. Now, how do we accomplish that goal? And one of the things that I talk about with my clients and setting goals and accomplishing them I can be specific, like weight loss or, for me, I'm bodybuilding. I have a goal, excuse me, I have a personal goal that around this time next year, we'll see what competitions are available. I'm going to compete in bodybuilding competitions. Nice. And that's a goal of mine. But how do you fulfill that goal? How do you accomplish that goal? And one of the biggest things that people forget, or at least amongst my clients, that they don't have the know-how, is to set milestones. What will show you that you are getting closer to this goal or that you are accomplishing this goal? For me, it's, I'm a little bit stronger. I'm lifting more. That's a milestone. That's a huge milestone. Seeing my physique in the mirror, that's a small milestone. But for other things, it's like, that's my biggest question. I ask that of all my clients in a session where, okay, here's your goal. Now, what are some things that you will notice that will show you getting closer to that goal? So they can keep an eye out for that stuff. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. By the way, I'm really digging this. I hope for those of you watching this first episode get as much from it as I'm getting from it right now. Because while you're already like teaching them how to drive, my part is let's make sure the car is drivable. Let's do the 7-point
Right.
check.
They see you first before they come.
Yeah, so let's make sure that everything's cool. Because, for instance, I'm going to take you as an example since you brought up the weightlifting. It's like, okay, I want to do this. It's like, okay, well, are you going to the gym? No.
Right.
Do you have weights at home? No. So how are we accomplishing this? It's like, well, I plan on doing it. It's like, okay, well, we're planning is not doing.
Yep.
So for me, it's the chakra alignment. I go in. It really is a 7-point check. Because for those of you not familiar with the chakras, it's 7 points from the root to the crown.
Yep.
And it's starting from the bottom, what I consider the nurture nature area, which is the chakra, the root chakra. It's like, what's there what are things that are in your nurture and in your nature that are stopping you from moving forward? Something your mom told you when you were a kid, something your dad didn't do, when your teacher stopped you, your first boyfriend.
Right.
Like the first girlfriend to tell you, I like you chubby. And you're like, yes, chubby is beautiful.
Yep.
And now you're trying to lose weight and you're like, well, every time I try to lose weight, something stops me from moving forward. So that's where I come in. I'm like, well, let's go back and why is that so important to hold on to that? So yes, before they're out driving, I'm doing the 7-point check and finding out what chakra has a blockage, why it's there, and why are you holding on to it? And then once we let it go and we're done, then I'll be like, okay, go see Life Coach Tommy. And then now you're ready to drive.
Now you're ready to drive. Very cool.
Does that make sense? I hope
It
that
does.
made sense.
Yeah, it does. Because there are, even in, it's an interesting segue into one of the questions we have later that I won't go into too much detail, not to spoil anything, but often clients will ask me what's the difference between therapy and life coaching, and that's a question we'll go into a little bit deeper, but I just bring that up because it's the same with that is in my initial contacts, I will ascertain whether or not they need to see a therapist. They got to make sure that the car is drivable, essentially.
Yep.
Some people don't want to see a therapist and they'll go to a spiritual coach instead because, there are those blockages. There are, the first time a girl told them, no, I don't want to date you. That's huge for a 9-year-old kid.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Romantic. And so that's some deep stuff that they can identify that a life coach is not going to focus on. So just want to clarify that. But one of the other things that I find helpful for my clients when it comes to accomplishing and setting goals and staying on track with them is building a routine, staying on track, making sure that, what you said, you had a bunch of questions for your weightlifter and you said, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? When are you going to get those things? When are you going to go to the gym? Or you didn't say it. You said they said I plan
on. Yeah.
And my question is when are you going to do it? And then and then after they've established the when, then we stay on a routine. Okay, so how often? What are you going to do? And so we have stringent action items that they will follow in that routine. And so that fast forward 90 days later, that routine is a part of their life. And there's not too much that can hinder them from accomplishing that goal if they've implemented that routine into their life. There obviously are extraneous circumstances. I'll give my own personal story real quick, is that I've wanted to be a bodybuilder since high school, since junior high, since I was introduced to the weights. And what happened was I couldn't use the weight room at the junior high because it was reserved for football players. And in high school, my senior year, I just kind of got into it, but then, I graduated and then I started working out hardcore right after high school for about 2 years. I was looking really good. And then there were some personal things. I went through a divorce, that sort of thing, and separated, and I didn't get back on track until college. Then I joined a fraternity, and that was my own fault. Not joining the fraternity, just
to clarify,
allowing the fraternity to hinder my goals.
College.
College. But then towards the end of college, I got back into it. And then I moved to LA and I was doing pretty hardcore, pretty good at it until sciatica. I ruptured a disc. And so I give this example because, again, it's try until. Because here I am, again, at the gym. Even though I suffer sciatica, there are many ways to get around that. Physical therapy moves and, that sort of thing. So I offer that. It's like, be that as it may, I had a routine for many, many, many years in my life, so that when these extraneous things hit me, I was counting down the days to when I could go back to the gym.
Right.
And that's pretty much the whole point, is building that routine helps you because you have that muscle memory.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one of the key words that I use in my sessions is strategy.
All right.
Because we all know, for those of you in Spanish, there's a saying that says "Uno pone, Dios dispone." It's like one plans and God decides. Basically, it's like you can make all the plans you want, but if things don't align the way that you exactly want them, and how many times have we had one thing not happen the way we want it, and we immediately put blame on that, and we don't do it.
Right.
So one thing that I talk with my clients about is strategy, plan B. And plan B is not let go of this idea completely.
Right.
It should one thing not happen the way you want it, what is your strategy? So for me, like listening to your story is like, so you had a strategy. There were several things in your life that blocked you from completing your dream. And you said, okay, I'm going to, like you let it go for a little bit.
Right.
You're like, I'll come back to it later.
Yeah.
And now you're here now. Going after your dream again. You have a strategy, which will then lead to fulfilling your goals.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny. This is again not relevant, but it's funny because I've been doing this for 20 years for bodybuilding, and you wouldn't know looking at me because the muscles ebb and flow or whatever when you stop working out. But I see so many people doing so many wrong things, and they want to give me advice and all that stuff. It's like, I'm good. I'm pretty basic when it comes to bodybuilding. I don't need your advanced C4 creatine stuff.
You're like, come down, Arnold.
Right, calm down. Anyways, and so we kind of dove into this, but one of the other things I want to talk about is identifying and managing distractions. Mm-hmm. Distractions is seems like such a light word to use when it comes to like huge epic goals that you want to accomplish. And not all your goals have to be epic. It could be something as, I want to finally talk to that girl. That's epic too if that turns into a marriage and children. But it could be something super simple, like I want to reorganize my library, or whatever. A distraction is it's an oversimplification so that you can see any sort of thing that alters your path or alters your trajectory as just a distraction. That's it.
Right.
A lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there are people who say, oh, this is a disruption. Oh, this is a prevention. They use all these epic, like stone words that are like hard to overcome. But if you can alter your mindset and just see this as a distraction,
right.
There's a different mental connection with the word distraction than disruption. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We all get distracted. And let's say example, meditation. Anytime you say meditation, people are like, oh, I have too much going on. I get distracted easier. Right. Yeah. So for everybody, for clarification, meditation, although there is a classic style, there are a lot of variables and different ways of doing meditation. So we'll talk about that another time. But for me would be the key word when people say, I get distracted easily. It would be, well, tell me the first time you realize you were being distracted by something. And I start listening to the key points. Well, I wake up I'm going to go to the gym and work out today. Got it. Okay. I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I have breakfast, I watch TV, and then I grab my keys, and then I remember I have to do something. And then they tell me, okay, well, what happened the next time? I grabbed my keys, and before I left, and if the distraction happens almost at the same time in the story every time, then that goes in my on my side of the table, it goes from a distraction to a blockage. What is blocking you from actually leaving your house to do such thing? And that would be the morphing part between distraction and blockage. And if so, I guess for me it would be if the distraction happens at the same time in your story, multiple times, then we need to go in there and figure out what's blocking you from moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a solid approach. I mean, that's, I when I go into live coaching sessions, I use what's called the Socratic method. I think I may have talked about the Socratic method before, but essentially, Socratic method is just asking a bunch of questions and getting them to where you need them to, not you need, but they need to be or they want to be. And Socrates was basically, he had his own thoughts and feelings, but he would never project or pitch those thoughts and feelings to other people. And he would just ask them questions. And, well, why do you feel that way? Oh, do you think that's the correct way to feel? It's like sort of those kind of questions. And so when I'm in a session and we see those types of things, those pattern behavior, I don't want to insult other life coaches who do this, but I feel I wouldn't be a valuable life coach if I just pointed it out to them and say, hey, that's pattern behavior.
Right.
Stop doing that. But instead we can ask questions and we can dig deep and we can say, why do you think that thing keeps distracting you? Why do you think that thing, sort of, and then they can explore, because the reality is that I can have all of these pitch, these ideas and these solutions and things that I can give them. I have a ton of that stuff, but they know their life more than I ever will. So they have the solution within them.
Right.
I hate to sound platitudinous, but it's like the power is in you.
Totally.
I can only show you the door. You have to, walk through it.
If anybody didn't catch it, that was a Captain Planet reference. If you were a kid in that time,
Captain Planet and the Matrix in one sentence.
Yeah, so that for me, okay, that shows my age. For me, it was Captain Planet. But I think you're right. It's in spiritual coaching, there is a lot of conversation. There is a lot of writing. From day one, we start writing, or they start writing a letter to themselves. I'm kind of following them along, but in them, we see the patterns when it's just day one, another day one, another day one, and there's no pattern to be seen because every day is a fresh day. But when you start showing them to them as like one of those pill-up calendars, and they're like, oh, now I see what I'm doing. Yeah. Because otherwise, in my sessions, if they don't realize for themselves what the blockages are, I can't remove them for them. It's not surgery. I can't just go in and say, oh, there's your sacred chakra. Let's just take this out.
Right.
If they don't figure it out for themselves, it doesn't work. I'm sure like life coaching, the same thing. If you don't want to do the work yourself, then we can't. It's like me going to work out for you. My muscles will do nothing for your career. So you've got to do it. Yeah. That makes sense.
It does. It does. And the only thing that your muscles could offer me would be inspiration.
Don't be fooled, folks. There's muscle under here somewhere.
All right. But I wanted to comment. I love the fact that you're having your clients write things down. One of the biggest things, and it happens in every single session of mine where I stop them and I say, we need to get that on paper. What you said is a very powerful affirmation. Good for you. I encourage you to own that and stick to it. Now let's put it down. Let's write it down so you can see it objectively. I always give people a quick psychology lesson because, and it helps with anything. It could be, something that's really gnawing at you. It could be a painful, something emotional, or it could just literally be a commitment that you made to yourself. If you don't write it down or if you don't, verbally record it, it's going to stay in your brain. It's going to stay in your head. And the problem, just like dreams, our thoughts aren't real. Our thoughts are just, chemical neurons firing, synapses, chemical and biological reactions happening in a piece of muscle in our head. There is no doctor or brain surgeon that can open up your head and say, look, there's your thoughts.
There's those photos we were looking for.
Exactly. Oh, your traumatic 8-year-old memory. There it is. Wow, I can't believe that happened to you. That's not possible.
But wouldn't that be cool though? Wouldn't that be totally cool?
Do some mind reading. But the way we make them real is by either recording them verbally on any sort of voice memo system, or whatever, or writing them down. And another thing about something that you mentioned, I think one of the most powerful things with life coaching and life coaching and spiritual coaching is accountability. That's the main reason why people hire us, is they just need someone to keep them accountable, because up until a certain point, they don't have that in themselves. And it just helps to have somebody coach them. Right. Somebody who's there, doesn't have any sort of ulterior motives, doesn't have any sort of emotional investment in their life, and really just wants to see them do well and can identify what's happening in their life and to help get them there. Yeah. Just today, for example, it was a very simple coaching session because we didn't do a lot of deep work, but we still worked. It was literally just him telling me of a specific project he was working on in that moment and some frustrations he was having with that project. And I was just like, okay, I'm here for you, bro. Let's talk about this. Let's talk it out. And he wanted to make sure that he wasn't losing his mind, because that project was going to fall under. And so I just helped him with what happens if it does fall under, because he needed to expose himself emotionally to that possibility. So, and it got him to a positive space where he's like, well, it's actually not the end of the world. I could do work on this, and that. And there was almost this sliver of relief that if this project fell through, there were so many other things he could work on. Yeah. So, the last thing I wanted to talk about as far as a way forward for this first segment, then we'll move on to segment 2 and segment 3, is discovering your value as a human being. There are 7 billion lives now? We lost a few to the pandemic, and I say that with all love and seriousness, but our population has decreased dramatically in the past year. But we have 7 billion humans in this world, and every single human being is a valuable part of this ecology that is human existence. And the biggest thing is that a lot of people, I will say a lot of people, usually I don't like to be so general, but I would even say billions of people don't understand their value or their contribution to their ecology. Before I go into that a little bit further, I wanted to suddenly there was I don't know, for those who aren't watching, there was a very audible deep breath. Oh,
because you're feeding into everything that aligning your chakras is about finding. So I said it earlier, we work from the root up. It's kind of like a Jenga game. You have to make sure that everything aligns correctly. So by the time we get to the to the crown chakra, which is the connection to your higher power, the universe, life, but it's also the way that I was taught. It's also the way to find the most divine version of you, or / the most perfect version of you. And in there is finding your value, is because you've already done the work from the ground up. So by the time you get to the crown, you're like, oh, now I get it. And I'll say this, one of the best things that my ex ever said to me early on in my sobriety was, I am perfect in my imperfections. And it's just accepting me with bruises and bumps. And occasionally I burp in public, and every once in a while a cuss word will come out. That's perfectly normal. And some people, one mishap like that completely breaks them apart. Right. But once we get them to that point where they see their inner light, and they see the cracks, and they see the rust, and it's like, I've lived in my body, so it should hurt a little. Yeah. But I am perfect in my imperfection. Man, that is huge, to find that moment where you're not going to be able to accomplish everything you want in life, but man, you're going to get close if you just go for it. Yeah. And again, I'll come back to you. It's Like no matter how long has passed, how many more gray hairs or aches come up, you're like, I know that I can accomplish that. And that for me is like, yes, that's what I want you to do. Like, I want you to value yourself enough that, going back to the original conversation, I want you to value yourself enough to know that you are deserving of going after your dreams and achieving your goals. So that's the ultimate goal, to make sure that people find their value, know how much they're worth, without getting too cocky. Of course, we don't want overconfidence, but get to the point where you know your worth and you know your value, and know that you have a place not just in your family circle and your friends. I call it the ripple effect, and all the ripples, that you are that center ripple, and that you affect the people around you. How many times, spiritually speaking, I'm sure there's many times when you're sitting at home and you're like, oh, nobody cares, I'm all alone, and all of a sudden a text jumps in and you're like, oh,
Right.
like this person hasn't texted me in months, and all of a sudden they're here, and you're like, I was just thinking about you. I do that to random people, like, hey, I was thinking about you. But those are, to find your worth, sometimes we require other people to recognize that, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's the biggest thing with finding value. You said a lot of powerful things, and one of the things that I wanted to pick up on was the imperfections that are there. It's almost like I'm visualizing like the perfect person, the person who doesn't have imperfections. For one, that person doesn't exist.
Yes.
However, if they did exist, I would feel very sorry for them. And again, we're coming back to bodybuilding, but muscular growth is a perfect example of how it's important to go through. There's gonna be some cussing on this podcast, but go through the shit, right?
Yeah.
And when you're pumping and when you're pushing and you're on the bench, bench press, or you're doing curls, dumbbell curls, you are destroying your muscles, and through that destruction grows more voluminous, more volume, more strength. It makes you stronger. It's not an emotional thing that you're going through, but even that emotional stuff that you go through, if it does, for whatever reason, I'm thinking of The Dark Knight. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stranger. But if it doesn't, and again, it's a bit of a platitude. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, because it's not always true. But there's a lot of self-awareness that is involved, and just identifying that you mean something. And not to go off on a complete tangent, but it's, when I was in the Air Force, I was a chaplain assistant, and through that chaplain assistant training, I had to go through suicide training to help someone talk them out of suicide. And there were two things that we were taught. My biggest takeaways was helping them understand their value. It's hard to get to that point with somebody who's suicidal, mainly because suicide, if you're suicidal, if you have suicidal ideation, you reach a level of mental illness. It's insane to want to kill yourself, because we are the only human we're the only human species. We are the only human species because we killed all the rest of them. But sorry. But we're the only species, we're the only animal on this planet that that wants or desires to kill ourselves. And the reason that's so insane is because every single animal is programmed in their genetics to survive. Dogs aren't jumping off cliffs. They know that if they jump off the cliff, it ain't going to go so well for them. So they have a genetic mechanism. We all have this genetic mechanism. And what happens with human beings is that when we go against that genetic mechanism, we enter the world of insanity. We become mentally ill. And so it's hard to bring that sense of value to somebody who's mentally ill. But the second wavelength is showing them they have a support system, asking them who should I call? Who should I call? And that person then can come into their head, and they can realize that they do have value through that support system, because every single person has a support system, whether they realize it or not.
Yep.
And obviously you don't realize it when you have suicide ideation. But so that was totally off topic and but relevant on some level.
Yeah.
But the biggest takeaway I got from what you were saying, and it reminded me of a therapy session when I was seeing a therapist years ago. I was not necessarily complaining, not necessarily whining, but I was just talking about all of these goals and how I'm never going to achieve them and these things. And he asked me, I'll never forget this question. And it's, it's like he's good at what he does or something. It's like he actually,
Therapist.
He's a therapist. Because this question that he asked me has stayed with me throughout to this day. And he asked, why do you believe that you don't deserve greatness? And I didn't have a good answer for him. And it was obviously designed more in a rhetorical sense, but it really got me thinking. It's like, who the hell do I think I am that I don't deserve greatness? And so that's, obviously that I've worked with that, and that wasn't like an aha moment, and my whole life was changed.
That wasn't the moment. Right. That wasn't the moment.
But it was a seed that has grown into something extremely powerful today, and has helped me realize that not only do I have the resource to contribute value, I can help other people identify their own value. Anyways, what were your thoughts on that?
No, well, I love that question. I know several spiritual coaches that use that type of question, because when we're trying to give somebody value, it's kind of like, let's go from the beginning. When somebody comes to me and they come and they're like, well, I used to have dreams. I'm like, no, you still do. Yeah. They're just kind of hidden. Let's find them. And once we find them and we make them and turn them into goals, what are the blockages that are keeping you from achieving that goal in your dream? Yeah. What are the blockages? It's kind of like a puzzle that's missing certain pieces. You can't see the whole puppy and the unicorns if you're missing pieces, and your goal is to finish that puzzle. So I come in and go, okay, well, let's find the puzzle pieces that are missing. But I just got chills several times, especially moms. Moms are huge with that, because they start giving their energy over to their children or their spouse or their partner, and they start forgetting that they have they're part of the bigger unit, that it's not just their kids and their spouse that deserves to achieve their goals, but them too. For some reason, they confuse their purpose in life, like to be a mom, with their dreams and goals.
Right.
Now, there are some people whose dream is to be a parent and to stay home. Yeah. Not that is not what we're talking about. Not what I'm talking about. But it's for those people that had a dream and a goal at one time, and they forgot it or put it in the back of their spiritual closet to work on somebody else's dream. Those are the ones, yeah. But it's sometimes I ask them that question, like, where are you on your list? Like, where are you on your list? Like, and I make them write to me the level of importance and your circle and the ripple. And sometimes they're like third or fourth. I'm like, so your universe, you're not the center of your universe. That's why things are not balanced. And that's a whole chakra conversation. But that is such a huge question. I hope more people listening or watching this will sit in front of their mirror and ask themselves that question. Yeah. Like, why don't you think you deserve it? Right. And that's and if you can't answer it, call us. Call us.
It's very important, because we can help you answer that. So there's a lot to unpack there that you mentioned that I want to cover, but I'm mindful of the time, so there's just going to be a sort of a segment, so we can dive into the other segments. But one thing you mentioned is that children, they're a sponge, right? They are energy sponges. My daughter, she's 9 months old now. Today, she turned 9 months. she is the way she is, and I'm thankful that this human being has my wife and me as parents, because she is the way she is because of how we are, and she's just a ball full of joy and energy, and it almost saddens me, and this is kind of off topic and totally off tangent to life coaching, but it saddens me sometimes to think that not everyone is as lucky as her to have me as a dad, because anyways, I won't go into that, but they are extremely intuitive, and they tap into that energy. If you're sad, they're going to know. I got upset once at something outside of us, and she could sense that, and she started crying. I was like, I can't let this upset me when I'm in front of her, right? But the biggest thing when you're talking about goal setting is sometimes there is this dichotomy where people think, and you may not have meant this, but this is kind of what I picked up on, is that they think there's this black and white world where if I am a parent, I can't do these goals. And I'll never forget the text I received from a friend whenever she found out that I was having a daughter. And she said, "So are you going to still pursue acting, or are you going to find a real job?" And because I knew her, I knew the tonality, wasn't like her being malicious or anything. She was legitimately curious. And I told her in that text, it's like, I do want to continue. I always want to be an inspiration to my children. I never want them to feel that their entrance into this world hindered my dreams. And I also would rather serve as an inspiration and show them that pursuing your goals is worth it. So absolutely, I'm going to keep pursuing acting. This kid's not going to stop me. But the other thing, and we'll cover this in other because it's a huge thing, but we'll cover it in other podcasts, is putting yourself as the center of your own universe.
Yep.
Because if you don't do that, and there's so many clients that don't do that, that I get them there, recenter them. If they don't do that, it's so hard. They're spread so thin. It's so hard for them to focus, and allow other people to have authentic energy from them. I always have the philosophy, it's like you have to love yourself first, because if you don't love yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to share love with others.
Yeah. And we are the hardest. I am the hardest thing to love sometimes. And I continuously work on that to make sure. But I want to, before you continue, like I really admire you for saying that about you and your kid, because it's true. Like, I remember hearing my parents say, we work so hard because of you, or even for you. Of course, they might have said for you, but in my head as a kid, it was like, because of me, they work from, they leave me with the babysitter so early in the morning, and then they pick me up late, and they're too tired, and we don't get to do things. So it does carry, and we talked about the root chakra earlier, that stays in that chakra, and that's a blockage. I believe that I became a workaholic because my parents did it, and I wanted to continue, I guess, their legacy. That was what they left me, is like, just work till you're tired. And you don't get to have a good time.
Right.
Maybe on Sunday we'll pick up, a box of chicken and go down to the park.
Sure.
But I'm really, spiritually speaking, I'm very proud of you for acknowledging that your kid came into your life. Like, hey, we wanted you, but you came into our life, so adjust. Yeah. And in that, she'll grow up knowing that you don't have to sacrifice everything. In life.
Yeah, I mean, and how is, because I know that there are, and we can talk about this in another podcast, but I know that there are parents out there that guilt their children, and I won't go into that, but yeah, thank you for that.
That would be a whole hour episode of that. So stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned for that one.
But I'll round out that segment with just one last thought from. He's more of a sales guru, but he's also kind of an executive coach. His name is Grant Cardone. He has a phrase, and he had a bracelet of it. But he basically says, success is my duty. Success is my duty. You have a duty to be successful. It is in you to provide for your children. It is in you to do to yourself, to elevate yourself so that you can enjoy all that life has to offer. That is your duty. And when you align that to whatever you're doing as a sense of duty, it is just a little bit easier to achieve your goals. And again, this is one of those things that's kind of off topic, but it's in my head. That's why one of the reasons I'm pursuing acting, or started pursuing acting, or I had this sense of duty. I will never forget the moment that I realized there was a sense of duty behind acting. And that was when, at first it was all about, I want to be famous, I want to be rich, all this stuff. And I started an acting class in Houston. This was around the time we met. And there was a role that was given to me, and I was practicing it and doing it. And basically the role was, it was the partner of someone who's homosexual. I was the partner. And the homosexual, she's
the gays,
the gay, this lover had passed away, and their parents had disowned him, and they didn't come to the funeral. So the monologue was the partner confronting the mom. And it was so deep and it was so raw and so powerful that I realized that this is real. This is like a story that has to be told. And so there are stories like this all over the place. And I am that person that can bring this character to life and tell their story. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I had this sense of duty. It's like, I have to do this. So anyways, again, it just kind of delves into the success as my duty.
I'm going to use that. That success is my duty. I hope people watching and or listening will put that on a Post-it note, because that was what I would tell their clients. Yeah. Put that on a Post-it note. Put it on your mirror in your bathroom so that every time you wake up and go to bed, you see that. And whatever dream path you're on towards your goal, you will remember that you have a duty to succeed in that. That's pretty awesome.
Cool.
Pretty powerful, folks. I hope you're appreciating this first episode. There's a lot to chew on this, folks. It's a buffet of information.
So really quick, we have some time left because we did start late. So that I'm looking at the time over there. It's not actually an hour. It's we are actually running out of time.
It's your show.
But yeah, so we basically the second segment will be a Q&A session, and for us, and we get these questions a lot. And so go ahead and question number one.
How are life/spiritual coach sessions run? This is from Lauren in Sherman Oaks.
Okay. So I'll take that question first. It's probably similar with spiritual coaching, but there is no one way. There is no, I do not come to, and I tell this to clients up front. I don't come to any session with a plan. I have a ton of resources within me, but my client will show me where we need to go. It usually begins with me asking them what we're going to work on today, and then they'll unpack everything, and it's literally them guiding the session, and I just go in and ask them questions and help them. And once I see affirmations or I see things that need to be committed to, then we'll do some work and we'll commit to those things. And then I usually give them homework at the end of the session, and then, letting them know that I'm going to check in on that homework the next week. Yeah.
Well, there's tacos involved, obviously. I had to bring out the word tacos at least once in an episode.
Tuesday,
so, yes, and we are recording this on a Tuesday, which I will be grabbing on the way home. But almost the same concept. Because I am a spiritual coach, energy reader, and Reiki master, there's a lot of energy work done. So the client, however we meet, there's usually an energy reading. And it's usually done either by a Reiki session or a card reading, just to find out where things are, like where are you in your life. And then, again, like you said, they dictate where we're going to go. I mean, obviously I'm sure we have a strategy, like, okay, like I already have something.
Right. Right.
Like I've already talked to them, met with them at least once, but once they sit down and yes, writing, I said that earlier, there's a lot, I tell them it's gonna be a lot of writing. So buy a journal, buy a notebook.
Yep.
And one thing I didn't mention earlier that it's really important, and there's with the writing, is I always have them put the date. It's put your name on the paper and put today's day and date.
Right.
So that you remember when you go back and read this a year from now, like,
Right.
look how I've
how
grown.
far I've
I mean,
come.
you have the muscles to look at.
Yeah.
I want people to look at their paper.
Right.
But yeah, it's, there's a strategy, but every session is different. And
Yeah, and I like that. And I do tell the only thing I require for my clients to bring to each session is a life coaching notebook. And it has to be, it can't be the thing that they've been, using for their meetings at work. It has to be like a specific life coaching notebook that they will only use for life coaching.
Yeah.
That's the only requirement. So for sake of time, I will go ahead and skip to segment 3, but we will go over the other questions in our next podcast.
Okay.
So segment 3, I had a Q&A with successful people from all over the country, and I asked them what they do and what helps them focus on their goals and how they become successful and how they stay on track with those goals. So first comes from Karina. She's a business owner from Houston, Texas, and she said that her why keeps her focused. She said that she thinks that why she wants to do this business and providing service when she helps others get what they want helps her get what she wants. And so that's the biggest thing is the why. And we do cover that a lot in our sessions is why. Why do you want to do this? Without the why, it's just meaningless. Do you have anything comments on that?
Again, we talked the analogy earlier. I was like, let's do the 7-point check and then you can go drive.
Yeah.
Well, like you're the why and I'm the what.
Right.
What is blocking us from getting? What's blocking you from getting over to life coach Tommy? Like wow.
Right.
Like I'm the tester before they actually go on the road.
Yep.
And for me is the what. What is keeping you from actually getting there? But the why is always important. I mean, my whys are, what is your goal? What's your dream?
Right.
And then we have to figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Good. The next note comes from Michael. He's a managing partner for a media management and marketing company here in Los Angeles. And it was one sentence that he said. He was like, it's okay to say no. That's what he said. He said, it's okay to say no. And he kind of commented, he was like, take that. I don't know if that's helpful, but I found that it's okay to say no. And when I saw that, it kind of blew me away. It's like, yeah, because we're so focused on the power of yes, we lose sight of the value in saying no to things. Because, if what you're being asked of is not bringing you value, or if it's something that can take you off track, you kind of have a duty to say no. And sometimes it's hard. There are a lot of people, the average human being is what we call agreeable. There's 5 different personalities. There's openness, agreeableness, neuroticism, extroversion, and conscientiousness. And the amount of people that are agreeable are monumental. And so it's very hard for these people to say no. And every time they say yes when they could have said no, it distracts them and it keeps them on, it takes them off track. So did you have something to add?
Oh, no, I do not, Tommy. Do not have anything to add to this. Actually, it's interesting because the last thing that I was looking at before we actually started was somebody was posting about the power of no, which is really interesting. But in spirituality, that's how everything works, folks. There's always a hidden message somewhere.
Right.
Exactly. We go back to parents and children, and like sometimes you have to say no. Like kids are not raised on yeses, and if you're a Latino kid, you know that yes is not it's an expensive word.
Yep.
Yes, but you're right. We grew up, and I'll give you a quick example. As somebody who was in recovery, so alcohol, drug addiction, when I sobered up, I went through a small stage of yes, especially with old friends that knew me before, because I wanted them to see this agreeable, nice person, and like, yeah, look at me, I'm all about
Right.
life. But then it went into, I started resenting them for asking me. But then the really resentment was towards me for not knowing to say no.
Yeah.
And no is a big lesson to learn. But agreeing to things does not make you a nice person. It doesn't mean that people can't take advantage of you too. I think that's an underline that we should.
Well, it's also tuning into self-love.
Yep.
It's like, just say no, Daniel. Just say
I-
no.
Except today, I will get extra tacos today, just today.
And the last one is just kind of funny. Rick, founder of a holdings company from Lancaster, California, when I asked him, what helps him stay on track with his goals, his response was, the best advice I can give is just fucking do it. So thank you, Rick. Very, very, very solid advice. Very much. And that is our show.
Wow.
Basically, next episode, we are going to talk about designing your self-image. We'll talk about self-worth. We kind of talked about that here. We'll focus a little bit more on negative self-talk and neuro-linguistic programming. It's kind of one and the same, but we'll talk about how the brain talks to itself.
Which I actually learned about that from you on one of my episodes on my show. So I'm all prepared, folks. I'm prepared for this one.
Great. And also, if you are listening, this is the first podcast. We do have hopes and aspirations that hundreds of people listen to this.
We're gonna be this is the step towards our big
Right.
talk show. So just be careful,
It's all
folks.
about content.
Know us
curation.
now. Know us now.
But if you have a question, feel free to reach out via the various social medias that we have. You can email me at support@lifecoachtommy.com. What is your website? How do people get in touch with you?
Well, the easiest one, because the other one's too long, but the easiest one is danielggarza@hotmail.com. That's simple and easy to go.
Cool. Yeah. So if you have any questions, also if you want to submit your own success story, the segment 3 where we talk about successful people, that's going to be a running thing.
Nice.
We will share your story. We will, give advice. We will give back. Make sure people hear that because it's very powerful. So, and that's it. Really appreciate you listening in. Any closing remarks?
Congratulations, man. I'm so proud of you for going after your dream and doing this.
We did it. So,
Yeah,
there we
awesome.
go. Well, thank you guys. And we're out. Probably should have looked at the camera to say bye. I'll edit. Well, all right.
So now you want to stop it so we're still live.
Oh, shoot. We're still live. Oh, God.
Before we
We have 2 people watching. We have 1 person watching now. It's probably me. It's paused, though. Okay. Cool. So, yeah.
So yeah.
There it was. I don't know how we stop it.